Welcome back. You're watching Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. Israel has faced international condemnation after at least 45 people were killed in airstrikes in the southern Gazan city of Rafah. Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer have traded blows on the Conservative plans to reintroduce a form of national service. And more than 2,000 people are feared to have been buried alive after a landslide in Papua New Guinea. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the political journalist and broadcaster, Theo Usherwood, and The Guardian's deputy political editor, Jessica Elgot. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the Metro reports on Sir Keir Starmer's first speech on the campaign trail about how his working-class roots shaped his political views. The Mirror leads with Starmer dismissing Rishi Sunak's national service idea as a teenage dad's army. The Eye leads with London mayors warning Starmer that they will press him for better deals on housing, transport and council funding. The Mail reveals a new report that says Labour's tax plans on private schools would force nearly half of those students into the state system. The Times reports that Labour has now won the endorsement of a coalition of 120 business leaders. The Telegraph reports on the Prime Minister's upcoming pledge to never impose tax on the state pension. The Express adds that this proposal will hand pensioners a £100 tax cut next year by raising their personal allowance. The Guardian reports on the global outrage following an Israeli airstrike on a Gaza displacement camp that killed dozens of people. The Star highlights the debate over Gordon Ramsay's new full English pizza. Yeah, the headline says something else, but that's the story. A reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Theo Usherwood and Jessica Elgot. Welcome to both of you. Let's start with the Telegraph and Rishi Sunak's pensions guarantee. What is he promising, Jessica?
So he's promising that state pensions won't ever be taxed because the threshold at which you pay tax will be higher. Every time you have your state pension lower. Sorry, I feel like I can't get the words out the way to describe it, but it's essentially because the Tories have been criticised for freezing income tax thresholds, and that means that a lot of people will be dragged into paying higher tax. As their wages rise, they'll be dragged into paying tax. And he's promising that that won't ever happen to the state pension. So the threshold at which they'll start paying tax will always remain lower than the threshold where you would need to pay it.
And Theo, how is he able to make this promise?
Well, he's going to be clamping down on tax avoidance. This is the second policy in 2 days. The first being, of course, national service, where the Prime Minister is saying, well, we're going to clamp down on tax avoidance and raise £2.4 billion a year to pay for this pledge, which in effect ensures that pensioners never have to pay income tax on their state pension, because as Jess was saying, the threshold at which you start paying income tax for pensioners is always going to remain lower than the state pension. And that's a significant intervention by Rishi Sunak. It's being called the quadruple lock, up on the triple lock or triple lock plus, depending on whichever terminology you want to use. But it's not cheap. It's going to, as I said, it's going to cost £2.4 billion a year, and it's worth to pensioners around £100 if it kicks in, and Tories when it kicks in next year, £100 a year, going up to £300 a year by the end of the decade. And in effect, Gillian, this is a bung to pensioners. The rules are going to remain the same for ordinary working people who are going to have to continue. The thresholds are going to remain exactly the same. And this has been a complaint on the Conservative benches as much as Labour, this fiscal drag where you have more and more people captured by the income tax thresholds, especially that £50,000 rate where you start paying 40 pence in the pound. Teachers, nurses, senior teachers, senior nurses, public sector workers, as well as those who work in the private sector when we've had inflation and real wage increases. Everybody ends up paying more tax because the thresholds have been frozen. But now the Prime Minister suddenly manages to find money down the back of the sofa by clamping down on tax avoidance for pensioners, and it's going to be controversial.
And Jessica, Tory strategists are hoping that the policy can win back pensioners who feel a little disillusioned, they've found. Do you think it will?
Absolutely, and you can see that Labour are targeting pensioners very, very hard as well. They had a full-page ad in the Mail only a couple of days ago where he was essentially attacking Rishi Sunak for his plan to abolish national insurance, something that the Tories say, is not going to affect pensioners in the way that Labour's trying to portray it, but they're saying, well, it's going to be something that eventually ends up hitting people's pensions in order to pay for it. And so this is, I think, a direct retort to that, to say here is something very concrete that the Conservatives are offering to pensioners, and you contrast that with the previous policy yesterday, which was a national service for young people. It's very clear where the Tories are targeting their voting and the dividing lines they're trying to target.
Theo, take us to the Times and the story there that city bosses are backing Labour. This is a coalition of city figures who've come together, seemingly, to put their might behind Sir Keir Starmer.
This is an interesting story coming, of course, the night after Sir Keir Starmer stood in front of, gave his maiden speech of this campaign, first proper speech of this campaign, and said that he wanted people to trust him, voters to trust him when it came to the economy and security. And they're following it up, Labour are following it up with this letter from 120 business leaders saying that Labour has the answer when it comes to securing our economic future. And there's some interesting signatories to this letter, including John Holland-Kay, the former chief executive of Heathrow, and also Sir Malcolm Walker, the founder of Iceland. Now, Walker, the Times reporting, signed a Tory business letter during the 2015 election campaign. So he's a switcher, and I'm sure this one will be an interesting one. Rachel Carroll, she's the founder of children's company Koru Kids. She's also signed the letter, and of course, the Prime Minister's wife previously held shares in that business. And this is the line from the letter, the key line from the letter. Labour has shown it has changed and wants to work with business to achieve the UK's full economic potential. We should now give it the chance to change the country and lead Britain into the future. And again, Sir Keir Starmer, they'll be delighted with this letter. They've managed to get this letter and get it into the Times, because the argument will be from Labour, if these business leaders trust Labour with the economy, then you can trust Labour with the economy.
And Jessica, business and Labour not, I suppose, traditionally thought of as bedfellows, but Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves embarking on a charm offensive. She's recently said that Labour would be more pro-business than Tony Blair and vowed to galvanise the private sector investment.
Rachel Reeves has made so much about Labour's renewed relationship with business, and her own background as a Bank of England economist. That's a huge part of Labour's offer in this election, and something they're really putting at the front of it. And I think as well, it's not just an endorsement of Labour, but they've managed to get, in this letter, what is quite a damning verdict from these business leaders on the Conservatives. They describe it as an economy beset by instability, stagnation and lack of long-term focus. So it's not just endorsing Labour, which you might expect them to do because businesses can see which way the wind is blowing, I think. But they also are, giving this verdict on the last years of Tory government.
Theo,
tell us how Lucy Allen has added to Rishi Sunak's woes.
Now, she is the outgoing MP up in Telford, and she, this afternoon, and it was an extraordinary tweet. She came out, rather than backing her successor in the Conservative Party, came out in favour of Reform's candidate. It was a staggering intervention, but of course, bad news for Rishi Sunak, who's trying to portray the party, or trying to at least put on a united front after all those MPs of his senior MPs, including the likes of Michael Gove and Andrew Leadsom, deciding to stand down. And then the dissent we've seen from the likes of Steve Baker, the Northern Ireland minister, when it comes to his policy on national service. We've then got some MPs deciding, rather than fight their seats and go out and knock on doors, that they'd rather attend a wedding or go on holiday to Greece. And then this defection from Lucy Allen, who said she'd be supporting the local Reform candidate, and immediately she was dropped and expelled from the Conservative Party as a result. And it's a win for Richard Tyson reform. And of course, it shows the potential threat reform can they pose to the Conservatives in this election.
Meanwhile, Jessica, in the Mirror, Sir Keir Starmer saying that you, i.e. the voters, can end Tory chaos.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a reasonably smooth day for Keir Starmer during this, during what is, as Theo was so well describing, another day of turmoil for the Conservatives. And Keir Starmer is saying there's this constant refrain of change. That's the one-word slogan that Labour have always got in front of the backdrop. And he's interestingly using this stop the chaos refrain as well, which I think is something that Boris Johnson also used in the 2019 election, and kind of tapping into the feeling that we've had a lot of turmoil over the past few years, especially since Brexit, a lot of turnover of prime ministers, and this is a time to kind of turn the page on that. And he seems relaxed in drawing dividing lines with the Conservatives over the National Service Pledge, calling it this teenage dad's army, as he describes it. And I think that we're going to start to see a few more of those very clear dividing lines opening up over the next few days as they set out.
OK, Jessica and Theo, thank you very much for the moment. We're going to take a break. Coming up, we'll look at a pilot scheme aiming to ease the burden of waiting to speak to your GP surgery at 8 a.m. We'll be right back.
I think it's frankly a terrible idea. I think it would kill innovation across the country. I think it's frankly an illiberal policy, and to be honest, it's a bit ageist as well.
Oh, I think broadly speaking, it's very positive. If we see existing countries in Europe have a similar framework, particularly in Scandinavia, in Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, they all have similar sorts of youth national service programs. They're broadly very, very popular, and they lead to greater sort of variety and opportunities for younger people once they leave. This is only 12 months of somebody's life. Somebody who's done 10 years active military service and another 8 years as a reservist, there's many benefits that young people can get out of this.
I agree that young people need some guidance, need some direction, but I don't think the solution is this approach from the government, which is to punish them and which is to say, look, it's your problem, it's your fault that you're not happy, that you're not connecting with other peers, and so we're going to punish you with what is essentially community service. I moved to Brussels just last week, and I was blown away by the fact that when I got here, I was told public transport in Brussels, if you're under 25, it costs you 12 euros a year. This is an example of the local government here saying, look, this is something we're going to give you as a young person to make your life better. I'm not saying we should do that particular policy, but it's about a complete changing in the way we think about how we approach young people and how we approach these issues that they may be facing. The fact of the matter is that over the last 12, 15, to be honest, even more 20 years, young people have had more and more taken away from them. Look at house prices, look at cost of living prices, look at COVID, which took multiple years away from young people's lives to protect elderly people. The entire British state is set up at the moment to keep taking away and away and away from young people. It's got to be a two-way street. If we want to have something like these other countries, we can't just look at that one policy they have.
This isn't a means of punishment. The Home Secretary, James Cleverly, yesterday very succinctly put it that this is an opportunity to both invest and reinvest into our younger people who are incredibly dynamic, incredible energy, to meet modern solutions, to have modern solutions to modern problems, which we can see with social disenfranchisement. We can see that across our streets every Saturday with marches. And we can see the fact that we need a more resilient society for the future security problems which we are facing.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Theo, Usherwood and Jessica Elgot. Let's start this section by having a look at the front page of your newspaper, Jessica. And this is the fallout from this Israeli airstrike on the camp in Rafah. And it's really just detailing the international outrage at what has happened.
Yeah, there's been dozens of global leaders who have condemned what happened, this strike that's caused an enormous blaze at this camp in Rafah, what is essentially supposed to be a safe zone, and something that's since been described as by the Israeli Prime Minister as a mistake, but still there has been bombing on Sunday night where, the IDF bombs ignited fires that have been spreading through tents. You can just imagine what it must be like, if a bomb hits a tented area, how quickly that blaze can spread and how difficult it will be to help people caught up in that scenario. And it's yet another one of these images that we've been seeing over the past 6 months have been so harrowing, and it's yet another example of that.
I suppose now the question is, Theo, what the international response will be.
Yes, and you're right to point to that. Again, there seems to be, Israel by the White House, was warned off targeting Rafah. Benjamin Netanyahu was always very clear that in order to get to Hamas and complete the job of seeing off Hamas, it was necessary to go into Rafah. Now, Israel's Defense Force, the IDF, is saying that they managed to kill 2 senior Hamas militants, but at a huge cost, because as Jess was saying, it seems that this airstrike ignited tents, causing huge blaze that swept through, as she said, was meant to be a safe zone. But Netanyahu and his ministers have always been adamant that in order to deal with Hamas, they needed to go into Rafah. But this, we expect condemnation, and we've already seen condemnation from Joe Biden's administration. But what had happened was that actually, originally, Joe Biden seemed to warn Netanyahu off going into Rafah. Then there was the head-to-head with Iran, and then Netanyahu seemed to trade backing down on Iran in order to get a pass from Biden and go in and launch an offensive in Rafah. So these strikes aren't going to go, with the devastation that we're seeing, it's not going to end anytime soon.
No, indeed. To the Times, Jessica, and this story about a pilot scheme that will perhaps stop that 8 a.m. rush to try and get an appointment with your GP.
I mean, there are so many reviewers which must really identify with that frustration of ringing and finding your sort of 40th in the queue. And this GP practice is running a pilot scheme to see if they can solve that by using ambulance call handlers who can kind of triage it. They can book a GP appointment, or they can send someone to a pharmacist, or they can potentially send an ambulance if it's serious. And people say that the wait has gone down to speak to someone from maybe up to sort of 45 minutes down to 5 minutes. And if it's something that could potentially be scaled up across the country, if it's something that works.
And they're saying that this solution guarantees that every call is answered there.
Yes, there's a great quote here from the head receptionist at the Wideway Medical Centre in South London. It was very stressful and busy. Patients would get upset. Now the average time to answer the phone is less than 5 minutes. It has made a tremendous difference. And of course, the scheme, as Jess was saying, it operates between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. and it's designed just to deal with that bottleneck of people always trying to ring in and get an appointment, because of course most people now get a GP appointment on the same, or try to get one of those coveted GP's appointment that the GPs hold back for that same day. But of course, getting one of those appointments often just relies on the luck of getting through that automated answering system and pressing the right button at the right time and ringing in dead on 8 o'clock.
Yes, I've been there several times. Yes, from your description, your accurate description. Jessica and Theo, thanks very much for the moment. We're going to take a break and have a look at the weather for you now. Well, unsettled conditions look set to last a few days yet, but it will turn dry from Friday. Before then, northern and eastern Britain will have a mainly fine start tomorrow, if chilly in places, while Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwestern half of England will be largely overcast with outbreaks of rain. Ireland looks cloudy but mostly dry. Southwestern Britain will be mostly cloudy through the morning, with prolonged rain clearing to a scattering of showers, while northern and eastern England and the southwestern half of Scotland will turn wet. Elsewhere, Northern Ireland and Ireland will brighten to showers, but the northeastern half of Scotland looks fine. Temperatures will be like today's, but it will turn windier in the south. Coming up next on Sky News at 11, more reaction to the Israeli airstrikes in Rafah, which killed 45 people. Benjamin Netanyahu saying tonight that something went tragically wrong.